What's good people, and welcome back to the channel here on KruBoy Productions. My name is BK, and this is the Silly, Nerdy, and Wordy Podcast, episode number 81, Nerdy Conversations with producer Nicholas Tabarrok. What's going on, everyone? I hope everyone is doing very well. Glad to be back doing another episode for you. And I will be talking with my first official guest, producer Nicholas Tabarrok. He has produced over 40 films. He has worked with actors such as Woody Harrelson, Kat Dennings, among many others. In this conversation, we talked about what it is to be a producer and the details of that in this business. He also talked about a future upcoming project that he is in the early stages of working on with Joel Cohen and Rob Cohen, a longtime writer and co-executive producer and production assistants and writer on The Simpsons. And we talk about many other things. So subscribe for more and follow the podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and let me know your thoughts in the comments, what you thought about this conversation. Did you learn anything from this conversation? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And next, you will see the conversation with me and Nicholas. I hope you enjoy this, and here we go. All right, what's good, everyone? Welcome back to the channel here on KruBoy Productions. My name is BK, and this is the Silly, Nerdy, and Wordy Podcast with episode 81. And today I have my first official guest. My guest is a producer. He has produced over 40 films, including The Baker, Stockholm, Defendor, and he's worked with actors as Ron Perlman, Kat Dennings, Tim Roth, Miranda Cosgrove, Woody Harrelson, Susan Sarandon, Snoop Dogg, among many others. He's also a producer in TV. He's sold shows in the US and Canada, including the creator of the Fugget About It, the Hulu original back in 2012, the animated show. Welcome to the show, Nicholas Tabarrok.
Thank you. I'm honored and flattered to be your first guest. No, very nice intro. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I'm just going to get right into the questions here. So I watched a few of your movies, and I want to get right into one of them. I have two questions from that, talking about The Baker.
Yeah.
And I want to say this was about second act of the film towards the third act of the film. Ron Perlman, his character, is walking through the nightclub. And I want to ask you about how the process was working with your cinematographer and the art department. When he was initially walking through the nightclub, the color panel of the pink and the purple blending together. And he's also having some flashbacks in his past. How did that come together in terms of pre-production or looking back at it in dailies? What's the process like talking with him and the art department, that scene?
Yeah. So that scene is pretty well as written. So, often when you're making a film, maybe not often, sometimes I should say, when you're making a film, it's written one way, but then when you get there, either the actors, the location, the budget, whatever the case may be, you have to amend and change things. And it can be quite different from how the scene is written. Right. But as best I remember, because, I read that script a long time ago, that nightclub scene is pretty faithful to how it was scripted, 10, 12 years ago. What was interesting about that is we shot the film in the Cayman Islands. And the Cayman Islands, beautiful place to live and shoot, but it's really small. There's no downtown. The entire country is about 65,000 people.
Wow.
So they don't have nightclubs the way we think of it living in a big city, In LA where I live, or New York, Chicago, Toronto where I'm from, you have dozens and dozens of nightclubs that have 1,000 people in it, certainly Fridays and Saturday nights and Thursdays. The Cayman Islands is too small for that. So what we had to do is really create an environment that didn't exist. So that bar, that's not a bill. That bar exists as it is, but it isn't like on a regular Friday night. It doesn't look like that, So we had to really populate it with extras to make it feel like a larger city nightclub.
I can
The
imagine
film
that.
said Miami. Well, if I remember, I think we made it non-specific city, but it's basically Miami. The
Okay.
sort of some of the establishing shots and so forth.
Got the
The
feel of that.
DP of that film, Adam Swica, is a guy that I've known nearly 30 years now. I think we first worked together in the late 90s. That shows how old I am. But he is a brilliant DP, one of the best I've ever worked with. So, you talked about the lights and the color palette. That credit's due to him. He's a great shooter, really knows how to do that. Yeah, so really it was about, finding a location that was the closest thing to the way it was scripted, filling it with people, and then Adam did a fantastic job with the lighting of that scene.
Okay. And the other question about the film The Baker is, and it took me a while to get to the end where I thought it was going to happen, but the casting process. Specifically, you ultimately settled on the character of Delphine with young Emma Ho.
Yeah.
Now, I want to ask specifically about how the casting process went, because ultimately she just has the one line at the very end, and so her performance is movement, it's the blocking, it's the facial expressions, it's a little bit of crying. How was that casting for that? And does the pool decrease because the actresses that are reading for this, they know that they don't have much speaking time, but they'll still be in the movie? So, or maybe that didn't affect it at all in terms of the pool of actresses to pull from?
Yeah, I mean, if the question is, were actors deterred because there were no lines? I don't think so. I mean, you have to ask the actors and their agents, but I don't think so because it's still a leading role with a lot of
Hmm.
screen time.
Right.
And I don't remember if we had Ron or we had announced Ron in the casting process. But whether they knew it was going to be Ron Perlman or not, they knew they'd be acting up against a veteran, actor. So I think it was a pretty attractive role for a young
Hmm.
actor. And but because of someone so young, I think the character is maybe 10 years old and Emma might have been 11 or 12 in real life at the time. Because the actor's so young, we're not going to get somebody experienced. We're
Right.
not going to get somebody who's been in a lot of movies or is a known face to the public. So we're going to be definitely casting an unknown. So we really auditioned a lot of young girls. I mean, this isn't a small bit part that if the
Right.
performance isn't great, you kind of get over it quickly. The whole film is resting on, her and Ron and the chemistry. So
Yeah.
we needed a great actor. And it was one of those things where, this sounds like a cliche and you always hear this, but it's so true that Jonathan, the director, and I probably watched, I don't know, maybe 30 tapes or something like that, maybe 40. And it was like we were centered on it. Okay,
Hmm.
Emma just stood out. In her audition, she just got it. And
Hmm.
of course, we weren't disappointed at all. She's a phenomenal young actor.
Hmm. And so when you're casting, just another follow-up question, was that something that you had the actress in the room, or is that you looking at her tape? Because I know back in the day, you have the people come in the room, and nowadays it's the tape, but I'm sure it happens a little bit, but not as often in terms of having the actor in the room for the casting and the callbacks.
Well, today we might, I would like to have an actors in the room. And the last film I made in 24, we had actors in the room and auditions were what's the word I'm looking for? Live, live auditions. But
Hmm.
we shot The Baker in 21. So remember, this is the height of COVID. So
Okay.
nobody was doing it in
Right.
room auditions. Every audition was virtual. Every audition was on tape. I mean, tape, you say tape. There's no such thing as tape anymore, but we still call it tape.
Right.
All the auditions were recorded. So, but that had more to do with it being the absolute height of, it was before the vaccines were released. I mean, it was like
Okay.
this was heavy duty pandemic COVID. So
Mhm.
nobody was getting together in the room at that time.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. As I move off the baker, I want to take you back to your early days. Can you tell me a quick story about when you first became a producer and you got your first movie released, you finished everything, you got it to where people could see it, whether it was in the theater or digital or a film festival. How was that process like? And knowing that I got my first movie out, it's official, I'm in it now, and now, you move on to the next one. But in terms of just in the moment of having the very first one done.
It felt great because I wanted to be a film producer, in university, so
Hmm.
years before I was ever a film producer.
Hmm.
But that was a goal. That was the ultimate, destination. So, the first film I ever produced was called Motel,
Okay.
really low budget movie. But yeah, I mean, I remember being on set, being really happy to have it financed, be making it, completing it, post. The very first film festival I ever attended as a submission, as a producer, not as a viewer, was the Fort Lauderdale Film Festival. And they treated us great, and it was really fun, and they did a great job. And that's where Motel premiered to the public. And God, it's going back now. I don't remember the general release that well, to be honest, but I really remember the festival. I remember being in the room and,
Hmm.
having my very first movie premiere. Very, very exciting, very exciting. And it's funny. At the time, I made my first film, and you think, okay, now I know everything. I know everything about producing. And of course,
Yeah,
now
yeah.
I've made, 30, 40 movies later, I realize there's so much more to learn, and you'll always learn.
Right,
So I know that even though I made a lot of movies, I know whatever movie I make next, I'm gonna learn something new and do something new I haven't done before.
right,
But back then, I thought, oh, I made a movie. Now I know how to do it.
right. The things are always changing. So the
things
business
are
and
always
everything.
changing. That too. That's right. Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. That's good to hear. Next question I want to ask. I want to go back to the strike,
Yeah.
2023. So I did a couple episodes on my podcast here, in terms of the writers and the actors. So what was that time like for you? Could you at least do things on your own without anyone, so at least you could have that portion of it ready to go, so when the strike ultimately did end, you would have a little less to do? Or could you just, I don't know, take this time to relax because there's not much you could do? How was that time like for you while they were sorting that out with the two guilds?
Unfortunately, neither is the answer.
Hmm.
I couldn't do a whole lot because I'm not allowed to work with writers. So
Hmm.
I wasn't allowed to develop material. I mean, I'm a producer. I'm not part of the Writers Guild,
Right.
but I couldn't work with writers, because the writers themselves aren't allowed to be working and developing and writing. So I kind of put a hold on all of our development. And the other thing for, completed scripts or scripts that we felt were ready to go out, casting was a bit funny too, because during the SAG strike, actors weren't working. The casting was a gray area.
Hmm.
So some agents I would go to and I would make offers to cast, and they were fine, business as usual. My clients are reading and, so forth. But then some were like, they're sitting this out, and until the strike
Hmm.
is over, they're not reading, they're not considering, they're not looking at material. So it really slowed down and put a hamper on casting, and I put a complete stop to any writing development, which is kind of what, and if I was in production, then I could have maybe got a waiver or kept shooting, or I could have been in post. I guess 2023, I was in post, so I could continue post. That's right.
Hmm.
So I had
Okay.
at least one film in post, maybe two. And post production wasn't really effective because you don't need writers at that point, typically,
Right.
and you don't need actors at that point, typically. So we were in post production, managed to keep busy in that respect. But I definitely couldn't relax because you don't know when you're coming out of it. You don't
Hmm.
know what the end is going to look like. You don't know what's going to look like when the strike is over. So there was no relaxing going on. I'll tell you that much.
So you were in the you were able to work with, I don't know if the composers were affected in terms of the engineers and the
Exactly.
mixing. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah, because we shot three films in 2022. So in the strike in 23, all of them probably were in post to some degree or another. So exactly right. So we could work with editors, we could work with visual effects companies, we
Okay.
could work with the labs, we could work with sound mixers, we could work with composers. None of those people are on strike. So that we are allowed to do.
Okay. I want to piggyback off of that actually, and I'm gonna get to the some questions from the pod you did with Mia and Emily. But in that, you mentioned that one of the favorite things you like to do that's part of your process is the music and
Right.
working with the composers and choosing that. That's something that I like as well in terms of that the music and the composing
Yeah.
adding it's almost sometimes it's an element a character on itself and elevating the film or the show. What makes it your favorite part of the process? Obviously, just music, getting to listen to music or choosing music, but what makes that one of your favorite things within the filmmaking process?
I get so much pleasure out of music generally, just in my life. I'm a huge music fan. I love music. So I listen to music, nearly 24/7.
Hmm.
First thing in the morning, I wake up, I put on music. I'm in the car, I have music playing. I fall asleep, I have music playing.
Yeah,
So to listen to music that is part of your job, it's like,
that's
this
so
is
cool.
great, like,
Yeah.
like how much better can you get than that? So, you have a scene in a movie. And between me, the producer, the director, often you have a music supervisor. Here's 5 or 6 songs that might work in the scene, and watching the scene 6 times with a different piece of music against it each
Uh,
time. Oh,
yeah.
I like how it makes it a more emotional here, or I like how it, emphasizes the actor's emotion in this one, or I like how it makes it feel really dark in this one. That's such a pleasurable, enjoyable experience. So yeah, I love it. But I think it mostly comes from, just my love of music. I mean, if I loved, furniture, I might love set design. I might be
Yeah,
really,
yeah.
set design's my favorite part of a movie. But for me, it's music.
And I want to go back to you mentioned film festivals. I have a
Yeah.
few questions about that. What I guess when was the last film festival you attended, and where was it, and what were you doing in terms of were you doing press junkets? Were you introducing the film? Can you talk about the last film festival, whether it was years ago or even recently?
No, it's quite recent. So there's a few answers to that. The last film festival I attended was Tribeca in New York City, just in no, June. Typically in April, but this year is in June. So this was
Hmm.
only like 3 months ago. I wasn't there with a film to show or sell. I was there as an attendee.
Hmm.
But I don't. I I love to watch movies, obviously, but
Hmm.
going to festivals is less about watching movies for me and more
Hmm.
about meeting people because the
Okay,
whole
networking.
industry is there. So it gives me an opportunity within a 3 or 4 day period. I can maybe have 3 or 4 meetings a day. So in 3 or 4 days, I can see 12 people. In my
Hmm.
normal course of business, working here in my office, I might see 12 people in a month. I might see one or
Okay.
two people that, have 1 or 2 or 3 meetings a week, as opposed to 3 or 4 meetings a day. So
Okay.
that's why festivals are so productive, even if I'm not attending. And in fact, we're having this interview today on September 2nd. I'm flying to Toronto tomorrow to attend the Toronto Film Festival.
Okay.
I don't have a film there, but I'll be there for 10 days to have meetings because everybody goes to the Toronto Film Festival. So I can
Right.
see,
It's a big one.
4 people a day over the course of 4 or 5 days. So it's very productive. The last festival I attended with a movie
Hmm.
was Toronto in 2023. So 2 years ago,
Okay.
I had a film called Irina's Vow, which premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival. And exactly as you said, it's organizing press junkets. I'm not part of them. Nobody cares what the producer has to say. Nobody interviews the producer.
Yeah.
But I'm sort of helping make sure, okay, the director, the actors, okay, they got to be at this location 10 a.m. on Tuesday. Make sure they're
Keeping
there,
them on schedule.
keeping them on schedule, and making sure everybody's seen at the right time and so forth. Dealing with a festival, do you have the print? Do you have everything ready? You negotiate a little bit. We want to play this day at this time in this theater. You don't have a lot of leeway there, but you
Mhm.
try a bit. So, well, we prefer this theater. Or we like Tuesday instead of Wednesday. Can we play on a Tuesday? How about 8 p.m., not 4 p.m.? You have those little negotiations. And then with the buyers, you're meeting with buyers. Hey, come see my movie. It's
Mhm.
playing. You should see it. Who's in it? You want to drive buyers and press to the screening itself. So that your head's in a lot of places when you have a film in a festival.
Okay. And then my follow-up question, I think you may have answered it. So I kind of had this thought a few days ago. I've never been to one. I'd like to go to one, but
Yeah, you got to go on your job, man. You
uh,
got to go.
so I guess you've answered. So you can go as an attendee just to see it, just to experience it. But uh, in terms of what if I wanted to potentially like cover a film or some of the films, they'll provided, I know that there are embargoes and there are rules and
Yeah.
regulations in terms of what you can. So would I be able to potentially like discuss a film per, abiding by the rules or regulations, or just maybe not, just, and if not, that's okay. And I'll just go and enjoy it as a fan.
Yeah, so I've never attended as a journalist, as a
Hmm.
member of the press. So there are definitely rules surrounding that
Hmm.
and accreditation. So like
Oh, right.
you get
Okay.
a badge which gives you special screenings that the general public isn't at. Because if it's, someone's got a podcast like you or you're the reviewer for the New York Times, you don't want to go and see a movie and have to wait in line or miss your seat or it's full because the public's there. So they have
Right.
special screenings put aside for the press so that they can
Oh,
go and do their reviews and so forth. There are embargoes. I, Generally speaking, I think it's done as a courtesy. I don't think you can sort of strictly enforce them. But generally speaking, not on reviews. Often the reviews come out at the festival, during that time. But when you
okay.
do press interviews, so, right now Venice is just wrapping up, or maybe it's still going. All the big films that are in Venice, Julia Roberts is there, Dwayne Johnson's there, George Clooney's there. They're all being interviewed by all the major outlets. Most likely, most of those interviews are embargoed until the film comes out because
Right.
you don't want to have those interviews come out. The public reads them, they get excited. Oh, the film's not coming out for 3 months. Or not coming out till next year. I can't do anything about it. They want
That's
to
true.
have the
That makes
interviews
sense.
come out coincide with the release of the movie, so that people can read the interviews, get excited, and then go see the movie.
Okay. Well, that's that. I understand. I mean, I don't think I'd be a member of the press, but nonetheless, I'd still like to
You
go
should
just
look
to
into it.
experience it
Yeah.
as just myself. So, but that's cool. And next question. Now I want to get to the Fangirl Film Club podcast, which was a great interview. I learned a lot.
They were really
Listen to
fun.
you.
They were good interviewers. Yeah.
They seem fun, and one of the things I want to get to, you got on your soapbox a little bit
Oh yeah.
about the 53 producers, which is insane, by the
Yes.
way. But from my perspective, there are actors that do that, that have their names and just have the producer credit and move it along. But I think you can correct me if I'm wrong. There are actors that have the producer credit that actually do the work, and in addition to doing their role as an actor on that project. So with that in mind, do you have any experience with actors that have the producer credit that actually do the work as much as they can do and then go on set and do their lines and their acting or blocking or action, how that changes for you as a producer on a project where you have, actor A is doing the producer role as much as they can in the dual role?
So I haven't experienced that. I've
Okay.
never cast an actor or partnered with an actor as, co-producers. I do have a couple films now, which I'm sort of putting together that way, but they haven't been greenlit yet. But I've never gone out into a production that way with the star of the film as my producing partner. I
Hmm.
have had the experience where they get a producing credit, which is just the part of the deal, but they're
Hmm.
not real producers, so to speak. But so there are definitely again, I can't speak from firsthand experience,
Hmm.
but Brad Pitt, his company is a real company. They legitimately find material. I just reading this morning, just before joining this call with you,
Hmm.
Jude Law has a series on Netflix coming out.
Yes.
Apparently, he
Black
found the
Rabbit.
material. That's right, exactly. He found the material. He developed the material. He put the cast together. He got Jason Bateman attached. That's real producing. I mean, that's what I
Hmm.
do. So
Right.
he's both a star of the show and a real producer on the show. So that absolutely happens. I haven't had that experience. I would, Jude Law, call me, Brad Pitt, call me. I'd love to produce with you guys, but it hasn't happened to me yet. But
Hmm.
there are producers that it isn't just a vanity credit; they actually make the movie.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I just
But,
wanted to
but most
see.
don't. When you see an actor with a producer credit or exec producer credit, more often than not, they had nothing to do with producing the movie, and it's just part of their deal, a perk.
I'm going to ask you about another thing because I noticed that when I'm watching, whether it's network television or a streaming show that goes for a couple of seasons, after a certain point in time, sometimes maybe in season one, it takes season two or season three, the lead eventually becomes an executive producer or a
Yeah.
producer on the show. It took me some years to realize that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I mean, it's often, these days, like the Jude Law show we just mentioned, you have
Hmm.
big stars right off the bat. But it's certainly in the earlier days of television, right up until maybe 10, 12 years ago, most television series in the beginning were cast with unknowns. Like if you look at Friends and uh, Cheers and CSI, the biggest shows ever made,
Nobody knew
when
who
it
they were yet.
started, they weren't stars. The actors were unknown. So
Hmm.
they wouldn't be given a producer credit because they're just unknown actors getting a big break.
Hmm.
By season three, you need those actors. By season three, those Friends stars, the network and the studio desperately needs to keep them on the show in order for the show to succeed. So, Jennifer Aniston and Matt LeBlanc and so forth can come and say, okay, I want this much money. I want to direct an episode. I want summers off,
Right.
only stay at the Four Seasons, and I get a producer credit.
Yeah.
And, I think it was NBC. NBC is going to say, yeah, sure, whatever you want.
Okay. And I want to also stay on the TV. There's something I've always wanted to know. And I noticed it. I don't know how many people care about this stuff, but when I'm watching a show or a movie, I guess maybe it takes a certain amount of time for the actor to get to a certain status. But after a while, the actor or the actress, you will see whether it's a show or a movie, like he or she gets an and as opposed to the name or a with. What is that process like? How long does that take? Lawrence Fishburne or something? He gets a
Right.
with or he gets an and or insert Julie Roberts or whoever. How does that happen? Is there certain parameters around getting the and the with in the movie or in the show?
Yeah. Not hard and fast. Like there's not like a strict exact rule, this many minutes or this much money or whatever. So it's negotiable. But
Okay.
generally, what that represents is if a big actor has a smaller role in a film or series, it's sort of inappropriate to give them high up billing because they're not in it that
Hmm.
much. But yet they have to recognize the fact that they are a big name. So just to give them
Okay.
like sort of fourth or fifth billing also seems strange if the second, third billing is lesser known actors. So by putting them last with an and with or a with is a way of recognizing. I mean, you just mentioned Lawrence Fishburne. So I don't know what show it is you're referencing, but he's a big star,
Hmm.
Matrix and all of that.
He's going to be in season 4 of The Witcher
The Witcher,
on
okay,
Netflix. Yeah.
perfect example. So he's not the star of The Witcher. There's a
Hmm.
whole bunch of actors have already been in it. There's
Hmm.
4 seasons worth or 3 seasons worth of actors already in it.
Hmm.
So it would be strange and inappropriate on season 4 to have Lawrence Fishburne as the lead actor. Well, what happened in the previous 3 seasons?
Right.
What are all those
Yeah.
actors doing? Yet he's
Exactly.
not an unknown guy. They're just adding to the cast. If he's just an unknown person they're adding to the cast, he'd be the 10th credited. But because he's a big star, but he's joining late, then the only sort of appropriate way to recognize his stature is to put him in that and or with position. That's a perfect example of where that's appropriate.
If you're not a part of the show or a main part of the storyline of the movie, then it makes sense, even though it may be a big movie.
That's right.
But
And,
yeah.
and you talked about the Baker earlier. In the Baker, we had the same situation with Harvey Keitel. So we
Hmm.
had Harvey Keitel in that movie. I mean, huge actor, legendary actor. All of the Scorsese films and the Tarantino movies. I mean, you know, huge movie star. But his role in the film was relatively small compared to Ron Perlman and Emma Ho and some of the other actors in the film. Joel
Hmm.
David Moore. They all had more sort of screen time in the film. So it's kind of strange to put someone the stature of Harvey Keitel in not a first or second position,
Right.
yet his screen time is so much less than Emma's, it's also kind of strange to put him in a higher credit than Emma. So what you do is you say Ron Perlman, Emma Ho, bunch of other actors, and Harvey Keitel. So that's how you represent the fact that he's a big movie star, but taking a smaller role in the movie.
I want to talk about your show on Hulu, and sorry for you said it's Forget About It, the animated show.
Yeah.
So I'm a big fan of anime, Japanese anime, and just other anime in general as well, like Marvel animation and others. But the process of making that show, in terms of working with the animators, the the artists, and then you get to the point where you are working with the actors and getting them in the recording studio to do the voice acting and meshing that together. And from my understanding, when you're doing an animated show, the process is a little bit longer because of the animation part of it. That has to take time for that to develop and be done. And then the voice acting. So can you talk a little bit about that process with the animation and the voice acting and the time it takes to get that? I'm sure there was time in between season 1 and 2, but
No,
talk about that.
I can, but not in depth because as a producer of the show or exec producer in television, I wasn't involved with the day to day. Like I was not in the voice recording. I wasn't sort of that is the showrunner, which is the name of the person who is doing most of the writing of the television series. That was my partner Willem Wenekers, who created the show with me. Brilliant writer, funny guy. So he was the guy, dealing with most of the creative issues. And then I had a phenomenal partner in Nine Story Entertainment, which is my animation studio or the animation studio for the show. And they took care of all of the animation and the design and the character. I mean, the initial character designs were sent to me and we looked at it and gave notes and so forth. There's like just still drawings. But then once we approved this is what Jimmy looks like. This is what Teresa looks like. This is what, Cookie looks like. After that, sort of like the animation of the show, I'm in the background. That is for people with more experience, know what they're doing far more than I do in the world of animation. So I can't speak with any great detail in terms of what the voice recording was like. I wasn't part of that. But yes, it does take a long time. And there is always a gap between seasons because, well, again, there are rare examples, usually when there's like a lot of hype and big stars involved. But otherwise, the show has to be made, released, then the network has to get a sense of the public reaction and the ratings and how interested the audience is before they greenlight season 2, season 3, season 4. So I don't remember the years anymore. It's going back to, I think 2012 is when we first debuted. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, 2012.
Yeah. So I don't remember, but my hunch would be we came out in 2012, probably didn't get a renewal to 2013. Then we start working on the season 2, and that probably wasn't out to 2014 is my guess, I'm going back a bit. But yeah, there was time between each season renewal.
Have you worked on any other animation projects since then?
Right now, we're doing one. So up to this point, Forget About It is my first and only animated production. But these really clever, smart, brilliant, funny writers, Joel and Rob Cohen, who are brothers, both writers from The Simpsons, greatest animated series of all time. They brought me a family Christmas script, animated Christmas. And at early days, this is only, we're not greenlit, we're not financed, we're not cast. We're just getting started in it. But I would be thrilled to get this film made because it'd be a lot of fun.
Oh, I love Christmas, so I'll look out for that.
Christmas movies, if you make an elf, you're every year people are going to be watching that movie every single Christmas.
Of course, they'll add it to the list.
That's right.
So I want to talk about filming locations.
Yeah.
And the basis of my knowledge, information, fandom among just movies, I own many Blu-rays and DVDs.
Oh, wow, still. Okay, good.
I'm going to keep buying them until they no more. And I like to watch a lot of the behind the scenes featurettes, and then I rewatch the movie or watch the movie for the first time.
Correct.
And specifically about the Transformers movies, producer Lorenzo di Bonaventura. He's been on all the Transformers movies. And he said on Transformers Rise of the Beast, which was the 2024 release, he said, quote, part of the reasons we're able to get into these locations is that people in charge love Transformers, end quote. And so my question to you is, how is it with you in terms of getting into particular locations, working with particular city and or country officials so that you can get into an area or close a part of town down for a couple hours so that you can film? Can you talk about that process, how much you're involved in that when you're trying to get to this place or that place or a special place that maybe doesn't let you, but they're going to let you do it?
Yeah. Yeah. And we've been very fortunate. We've had experiences exactly like that. I can't remember them all now, but we've shot on government properties, heritage properties, city halls, courtrooms, places where generally you're not allowed to do that kind of thing, but you go and ask for special permission and you got to write a letter and so forth. So I'm not directly involved. I have a whole location team, a location manager, and that person's job is to liaise with the location owner, whether that's an individual who owns a house or business or something, or if it's the government, as again, if you're shooting in a public park or something. So their job is to make sure we have the right permission and then that we have the right security and the right notice and we deal with the public. So, but you're absolutely right. It's a big job, and it varies a lot depending the reception to that. Generally speaking, cities like Toronto, LA, New York, which have tons of shooting, where it's not exciting or fresh or new or novelty to them, they're like, okay, pay me. And they've got it all figured out. They know what the rules are. They know how it works. Like, you want to shoot in my house, it's $5,000 a day. You want to shoot in this public park, you need to hire these cops. You got to pay for parking. You got to book a lunchroom. It's just all figured out. When you're shooting somewhere that has not been shot in before, or it's a bit new and unusual, which I also have had the experience, generally people are a bit more open. It's going, oh, that's cool. You want shoot my restaurant? Yeah, go for it. And they may not charge you because they think it's fun, or they think it's free press, or they think they're going to get, a little bit of residual benefit from it. So I've had both experiences, in the Cayman Islands, which had no shooting. We were the first movies to shoot the full feature film there. People really opened the doors to us. Like, we shot in some incredibly beautiful, expensive homes, but they were open to it because they're like, yeah, this is cool. This is fun. Shoot in my house, And if you were trying to do the same thing in, say, Los Angeles or Toronto or New York, they'd be like, you want to shoot in my house? It's going to cost you $50,000, and you have to get an insurance. You got to do this, you got to do that. So it varies a lot.
And stay on the Girls Podcast, Fangirl Film Club Podcast. You mentioned a little bit, and I saw have it in your bio, about your course you taught at Shanghai. I wanted to ask you about that, how that was for you, and is the course still being taught by someone else at that university?
I love the experience. In 2018, I was asked to teach they wanted me for longer, but I the most I could give up was 3 months. So I taught a 3-month program of how to produce feature films in the Shanghai University. Loved it. I love being in a foreign city. I love being in Shanghai. I love just that experience. And I enjoy teaching too. So that was a great experience. Whether or not it's still going, it's a good question. I don't know. That was 2018. So for me, 7 years ago. And for a little while, I stayed in touch with the other, professors and the people that were still there. But I haven't been in touch with anyone there in several years now. So I hope it's still going, because I think it was a great program and very enjoyable. But I don't honestly know if it is or not.
I think I'm getting through a lot of my questions, so maybe we'll possibly end early. But how we got together, you listened to episode 57 about Lord of the Rings, War of Raheem.
Yeah.
And I had my nerdy note about them trying to get it out quick so they can, have the rights for the future Lord of the Rings films, in terms of the financial aspect of it. And you did talk about it on their podcast as well. But in terms of the financial aspects of getting a film funded and doing that aspect of it, that's probably more towards the end before you can get to the finish line, I would imagine. Can you talk a little bit about that process in terms of how that goes at a high level? You don't have to get too into the weeds unless you want to. I don't mind. But
Well, it's incredibly difficult. It's harder than it's ever been, unfortunately. I mean, look, you're asking people for millions of dollars,
mhm,
unless you're making films as a hobby, or a
yeah,
slightly exaggerated hobby, which people do, and I'm not knocking that. That's fantastic. And you're doing it on your iPhone or, cheap equipment with your friends. It's millions of dollars to make movies. So
right.
you're asking people for a lot of money. And there's a lot of product out there. So it's very, very competitive. So financing films is extremely challenging and tough, which is why tax credits and government incentives are so popular because it is more accessible financing than private money, which is why every studio in the world, from Netflix, who has more money than anyone, and Disney and all these major studios, they're shooting in Canada, they're shooting in the UK, they're shooting in Georgia. Marvel shoots almost all their movies in Georgia.
Hmm.
It's yes, they have great crews and all that, but that's not why they're going. They're going because there's a tax credit. There's going because the government is helping subsidize the cost of the movie by going there and employing all kinds of people and spending money in that region. So that's why films are such a global business. That's why there's so much shooting all around the world. It's
Hmm.
not just for the look of it, it's for the financing of it. Some portion of your financing is always going to come from a private company, typically that is buying the rights. That is saying, in exchange for the money I'm going to give you, we are going to have the exclusive rights to sell the movie to the public for a period of time. And that money is very, very difficult to get.
All right. So I want to stay on that the episode that you listened to. I wanted to get your thoughts on that since I actually have a producer here. Again, coming from an outside
Yeah.
perspective, but I feel like I know a little bit more than a casual person. But can I get some feedback on at least that episode that you listened to, whether it's about the movie or the me breaking down the Screen Rant article? I'd like to hear, I guess, your thoughts.
Yeah, but you'll have to forgive me because it's been so long ago, and I've heard and heard 1,000 podcasts and read 1,000 articles since then. I don't remember the specifics, so you got to refresh me on what
So yeah,
specifics were.
so the Lord of the Rings War Raheem movie that released in December 2024, and then I had a
Yeah,
nerdy note about New Line because they had to put that movie out quickly. It didn't make much money because of them trying to retain the
right.
rights to make the future Lord of the Rings movie and $30 million budget, and I think it only made about 16 or so per
Yes.
that article, and they were just unfortunately did have they had to do because they announced that Return of Gollum is going to be in 26 or 27 and two other movies and Peter Jackson is returning. So
So you're right. So that is an unfortunate incident or instance, which happens sometimes, it's not frequent, but it happens sometimes, where the purpose behind a production isn't really to make the best film possible. It's
right.
to secure the rights. And I remember now. So in that case, New Line had the rights to the Lord of the Rings books way back to, when those first Peter Jackson movies were made.
Hmm.
And as I just, referenced, they would have those rights for a limited amount of time. It might be 25 years, thinking back. They probably had it from the late 90s till 2024. So they probably had, I have no insider knowledge. I have never seen these agreements, but I'm guessing from precedents. They probably had a 25-year rights to those novels, those books.
Hmm.
And it would say something like it would expire at the end of the 25-year term to be automatically renewed if they make a movie within this time period. Or every time they make a new film, it adds another 5 years or adds another 7 years to the term of their rights. So they would have looked at this and they said, okay, our rights are going to expire December 31st, 2024. And again, I'm
Hmm.
inventing the dates. I don't know firsthand, but I'm
Right.
guessing.
Hmm.
Those rights are really, really valuable. The Lord of the Rings is a huge property. We
Yes.
want to hold on to those rights. But if we don't make a film, if the rights just revert back to the estate, the J.R.R. Tolkien estate, they're going to charge tens of millions of dollars
Hmm.
to get them back again. However, if we can extend the rights, it's going to be much cheaper. In order to extend those rights, we have to have a film released before the end of the term. So they would have rushed into that movie, probably not put the best amount of work into it, and got it out in time just to satisfy a legal clause.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that was unfortunate. I liked the movie, but I think I said that just they didn't market it well, but they were just rushing it to get it out so that we
Yeah,
can enjoy those movies in a few
yeah,
years. So, but that's part of the show business, as they
that's it.
say.
That's it.
The
That's it.
downside of it. But I think I'll just want to end with one last thing. You mentioned that you're working on an animation project, but
Yeah.
is there anything that you would like to tease or promote or that you have upcoming that I can
Yeah.
be a little part of helping? Or if you don't, that's okay.
I love the opportunity, and you always want to take advantage of that. Unfortunately, you caught me at a period where we don't have anything coming out the rest of the year, so there's nothing
Oh,
that's sort of immediate. I wish I had a film that was like, this is a great opportunity.
uh,
But what I would encourage people to do, there's new material on the Forget About It YouTube channel all the
mhm.
time. So
Okay.
please go to Forget About It on YouTube, subscribe. We're always putting out new material on that channel. It's constantly being refreshed. So I'd love
Okay.
to get more people with eyeballs on the Forget About It YouTube channel.
Okay.
And then I made a film in 2024, finished post this year, called 109 Billion Followers, with the great J.K. Simmons as the lead.
Okay.
And we don't know when that film's coming out, but that'll be my next release. Sometime in 26. Please keep an
Hmm.
eye out for 109 Billion Followers.
109 billion files. Okay,
Yeah.
I will also I'll link to your website in the description as well as to your YouTube
I love
channel
it.
as well.
Yeah.
So that's where we're going to end. I really appreciate it. You're my first guest. My heart was racing before. So thank you so much for
Thank you.
doing this. And so that's going to be all for today. The next video you'll see up on the screen is actually a smaller indie film. It was episode 67 about tornado. Came out in at the end of May. Some great cinematography shots there. So check episode 67 and episode 80 about Eden. Coincidentally enough, I believe Vertical Entertainment, that is also one of the distributors of Eden, which I noticed when I saw it in theaters, which did one of your movies as well. So that video, episode 80, will be there. So check it out, and just want to send the rest of you guys good vibes for the rest of your day. And until next time, we will talk soon.